All right, everybody. So we are back. Another busy weekend, tons of protests, more ideological zealots, fighting in the streets, another shooting. There's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. But at the root of it all is the very fundamental act of protesting. And I wanted to discuss the protest thing real quick because over the last 20 years or so, what's happened is that every time there's like a large cycle of protests, the government then turns around and passes legislation to further criminalize the act of protest, which is literally one of the most American things you can do. I mean, if were it not for protest, black and brown people would still be property. Women would be, well, slightly above property. And every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you would all be drinking tea, singing God Save the Queen. So, protest. It's very American. If you remember a few years back during the last cycle of big protests, what came out of that was some federal legislation and a whole bunch of state legislation in different states where they increased the criminality of protesting against pipelines. And all that happened after the, KXL and No DAPL protests, which ended in a federal standoff. That was a giant mess. And again, this is cyclical. We've discussed this, how legislation usually is reactionary. So now, because of these new protests and the fact that we're in an election year and everybody's trying to win the ideological war in their specific voting district so that they can keep their cushy seats and their $190,000 a year salary and get all the money under the table for having influence, all of a sudden everybody cares about protest again. So let's just roll through some of the stuff you might have missed in the overall scheme of protest stuff. So this happened a couple days ago. We'll start small. We'll work our way up. Truck with supplies for protesters seized by law enforcement officers in Kenosha. A U-Haul truck loaded with supplies for protesters in Kenosha was seized by police or federal agents, and 2 people inside were arrested. The Milwaukee church that sent the supplies says it hasn't been given an explanation. The news asked the Kenosha police chief why their $1,000 worth of food, snacks, and drinks destined for protesters was intercepted. We happily loaded it up with what we had, said the reverend at the church. He then took the local news inside and showed their, quote, supply depot for protests at their church, which is near the UW Milwaukee campus. Those are the types of things in the U-Haul: snacks, water, Gatorade, Band-Aids, fire extinguishers, Overton said. And you don't have that stuff back yet? No, we don't have it back, and we have no word that we might ever get it back. The church has been collecting supplies for protests for months. Pastor said this is the first time goods have ever been confiscated. When the news questioned the Kenosha police chief, he said he didn't know about it. Quote, "I'm not aware of that incident," he said. The church, however, wants answers. I have no idea how the police could interpret water, Gatorade, bags of chips, and fire extinguishers as a threat. And the fact that even after seeing all that they confiscated it and continued to proceed to arrest the driver and passenger is absolutely beyond me. So that was the first one. From there, it gets significantly fascier and fascier. Police and federal agents arrest Seattle-based Riot Kitchen crew that stopped in Kenosha to serve free food. Look, it's a bus. Ooh, scary. It's the Riot Kitchen bus. This is a picture from when they were in Seattle. 8 volunteers from the Seattle-based Riot Kitchen were ordered out of their vehicles and arrested by law enforcement officials soon after their arrival in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where they had planned to provide free food to protesters. A video posted on Twitter purports to show some of what happened during the daylight arrest. 2 officers arrive in what appear to be unmarked vehicles and surround a minivan that had just fueled up at a Kenosha gas station and was carrying a group of Riot Kitchen volunteers. They set off on a cross-country journey, planning to provide free food at a march scheduled for Friday in Washington, D.C. But news of the shooting of Kenosha resident Jacob Blake by a police officer caused them to change their plans, and the group's van and a black-painted bus diverted to Wisconsin. At least one member of the Riot Kitchen group was arrested, and booked by city police into Kenosha County Jail on misdemeanor charges of disorderly conduct. No, not a violation and a ticket. No, a misdemeanor. According to jail records that note a $150 bond. Others in the group who were arrested face similar charges. We are a nonprofit and our mission is to feed people for free, protesters and everyone in need. We're from out of town, but that's not illegal. In the video on Twitter, officers move in on the riot kitchen van, guns drawn. Someone yells, "Get the fuck out!" A uniformed law enforcement officer then swings a baton to shatter the glass of the passenger side front window. The officer reaches inside to open the door, and people exit the van. An officer eventually gets into the vehicle and drives it away. On Thursday afternoon, 4 of the riot kitchen crew volunteers had been released and 4 still remained in jail. Kenosha Police Department tweeted that a, quote, citizen tip, bootlicker, was received about several suspicious vehicles with out-of-state plates meeting in a remote lot. Sounds nefarious. Oh, it was people with a mobile soup kitchen feeding people. Oh, okay. Police said in the statement, acting on this information, Kenosha police officers located the suspicious vehicles and took up surveillance. Kenosha police were assisted by the United States Marshals. Okay, it looks like they have butter and maple syrup. We're going to need everybody to swarm. Is everybody ready? Everybody on 3? Swarm, swarm, swarm! Like, they're fucking feeding people. Ugh. And then you wonder why people hate the police state. Police say they made 9 arrests for disorderly conduct from 3 vehicles that included the school bus, the minivan, and a bread truck. They say they observed the occupants of the bus and bread truck exit to fill multiple fuel cans. Dun, dun, dun. Fuel cans. Yeah. Oh no. Why else would you need fuel cans? It's either something nefarious or for cooking food. Police, who said the officers wore appropriate identification, said the minivan attempted to drive away, but that the police ultimately forced entry into the vehicle. Police said the vehicles also contained helmets, gas masks, protective vests, illegal fireworks, and suspected controlled substances. The riot kitchen originally formed to feed people during the recent Seattle protests and had a kitchen at Capitol Hill Organized Protest Zone, or CHOP. The group expanded its efforts to provide food at Portland protests and this month incorporated as a nonprofit. The volunteers that arrived in Kenosha were part of a broader wave of people, both from the left and the right, drawn to Wisconsin in the aftermath of the shooting. In a statement earlier this week, Kenosha County Sheriff said much of the damage is being inflicted by people coming in from outside our community. Once again, one of the ways you know that you're tumbling down the rabbit hole towards fascism is when protest becomes outlawed and people are preemptively arrested, for thinking they're going to do something. This is some very Minority Report shit. Now, not to be outdone by local police forces and federal agents, U.S. government got into the action. Here we go. Right from the mouth of Fox News. This way, it's fair and balanced. House bill would block rioters from coronavirus unemployment benefits. Yeah. A House Republican introduced a bill that would make those convicted of violence, looting, or vandalism in connection with a protest ineligible for enhanced coronavirus unemployment benefits. The ones that don't exist because they haven't passed an extension. Yes, a House Republican introduced a bill to block access to a government program that currently doesn't exist. That is peak Republican lawmaker right there. The, quote, Support Peaceful Protest Act would also make rioters, quote, financially liable for the cost of federal policing, according to the bill, which is sponsored by U.S. Rep. Jim Banks, a Republican from Indiana. General rule of thumb for y'all. Whatever the name of a bill is, it's always intended to do the opposite, and the more patriotic it sounds, the worse it gets. If you have any questions, please see the constant re-upping of the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, and anything involved with any mission that has the word patriot in it. Operation Blinding Patriot. Operation Screeching Patriot. Yeah, it's usually Operation Dead People. Peaceful Protest Act. If you're convicted of a crime that caused more manpower and law enforcement officers to deal with it, then perhaps you should be on the hook to pay for that. So they're trying to get back to the point where they're privatizing policing and everybody has to pay for it. That's great. Hey, people already do pay for the police. What's that thing they do? Paying taxes. That's right. Paying taxes. Yeah. On their income, which is something that wealthy people don't have to deal with because they don't have personal income. They just have equity. Yeah. But pish posh. That's, why get caught up in the, in the specifics? Like, I don't know, forcing people to pay for federal agents in connection with vandalism. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. But if you're smoking people in the street with a fucking AR, that's cool. Hey, at least he didn't hurt any property, right? That's right. Property, it's always the most important thing. Banks said he introduced the bill the day after an older couple who were his constituents were harassed by protesters while leaving President Trump's nomination acceptance speech at the White House on Thursday evening. Yep, there you go. I mean, I'd say that would qualify as harassment. I'm being unbiased here. Yeah. Also, you shouldn't be fucking, going to support a fascist shitbag. So my sympathy level is low, but I will concede that this happened. I also do not think that this warrants federal legislation. He said many rioters have time to participate in violence because they're unemployed people receiving government benefits that expired, including increased federal benefits for those who have lost their jobs amidst the pandemic, even though they already expired. Quote, what we're seeing happening in big cities and around the country are angry, violent mobs showing up at federal properties, tearing down monuments on federal properties, especially in Washington, D.C., and it's got to stop, he said. What my bill would do is add new consequences to those individuals who are breaking the law. There are a lot of Americans who are showing up at peaceful protests, he said, adding that his bill is a common sense step to add some accountability for some of these angry mob protests that are occurring around the country. Yeah, angry mobs, they're the worst. Ugh. The people who are acting out in violence are very different from those who are showing up peacefully, and it's easy to see the difference. Yeah, I don't know who was carrying the AR. Never mind. He added that the option for peaceful protests is part of being an American, but causing harm to another person or defacing federal property isn't okay. Yeah, so basically, people in government want to remind you that as long as you protest in a way that inconveniences nobody and thus has absolutely zero effect, if you do that, they're okay. If you don't, they're just going to keep criminalizing dissent. They're going to keep criminalizing your freedom of speech. They're going to keep criminalizing your right to occupy public space. They're going to continue, further legislating down your ability to seek redress from your elected officials. I know there's a magic piece of paper somewhere that was written by a bunch of old white people who owned a whole bunch of other people that says something about all those points. But again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with specifics because, ideological warfare, man. Gotta stay focused. Eye on the prize. See? We should take those tax dollars away and say those who break the law in violent protest shouldn't receive taxpayer dollars. Also, the gang known as the police, they get like $700 billion around the country. And they break the law and violent protest all the time. But not only do we not take away their money, but they're also immune from being sued by people every time they do something like, break their arms or break their legs or paralyze them or murder their family members or kill their dog or any number of things. Yeah, that gang, they're okay. They're immune. But the rest of you have to pay because you are not properly licking the boot.